I didn't cry when my brother told me I wasn't invited to his wedding. I didn't yell. I didn't throw my phone across the room. I just sat there at my kitchen counter, still in my work clothes, a half-eaten bowl of pasta going cold in front of me, staring at the text on my screen until the words stopped making sense. Abby said she'd prefer to keep it small on her side. I hope you understand. I read it 4 times, then I set my phone face down on the counter and finished my pasta. That was the part that surprised me most about myself, that I finished the pasta. Let me back up because this story doesn't start with a wedding. It starts about 6 years earlier when my brother, I'll call him my brother, because that's what he is technically, when he lost his job at the logistics company he'd worked at for 3 years. He called me on a Tuesday night, crying. He said he didn't know how he was going to make rent. He said his girlfriend was going to leave him if he couldn't get things together. He said he felt like a failure. I was 26. I had just gotten my second raise at the accounting firm where I worked. I was living in a 1-bedroom in Columbus, eating lunch at my desk 5 days a week, saving aggressively, because I'd grown up watching my parents struggle, and I had promised myself I would never feel that kind of panic. I was not rich, but I was stable. So I told my brother I would help him. It started with his rent, $800 that first month, which he swore he would pay back. Then $900 the next month, because his car needed work, and he couldn't get to interviews without it. Then I started sending money directly to my parents too, because my dad's hours had been cut and my mom's knee surgery meant she couldn't waitress anymore. I opened a shared account with my mom so I could transfer money in easily. I set up automatic payments, $1,100 a month to my parents, $700 to my brother, which eventually became a fixed transfer after he moved in with Abby and her toddler from a previous relationship, and he told me the little girl needed school supplies, and then enrollment fees, and then a laptop for remote school during the pandemic. I did the math once, late on a Friday night when I couldn't sleep. Over 5 years I had sent my family somewhere north of $92,000. I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't take vacations. I drove a 2014 Honda Civic with a crack in the windshield I kept meaning to fix. My coworkers would talk about weekend trips to Nashville or Scottsdale, and I would nod along and say I was saving up. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family takes care of family. I told myself a lot of things. The first time I met Abby was at Christmas 2 years into their relationship. She shook my hand and said she'd heard so much about me, which felt warm until I noticed she said it the way you say something because you're supposed to say something. She spent most of dinner talking about her sister's renovation project. She did not ask me a single question about my life. By the following Christmas, she had moved into the house my brother rented, the house whose deposit I had quietly covered, and she had opinions about everything. About how my mom cooked, about where my dad should be looking for work, about why my brother was too dependent on his family, which was a remarkable thing to say when you considered who was actually paying for things. I kept my mouth shut. I kept sending the transfers. When my brother called to tell me he'd proposed, I was genuinely happy for him. I know how that sounds now, but I mean it. I loved my brother. I remembered the kid who used to sleep with the light on until he was 12 because he was afraid of the dark, who would text me memes at 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep. I wanted him to be happy. I assumed I'd be in the wedding. Maid of honor, bridesmaid, something. I didn't need a title. I just assumed I'd be there, the way you assume you'll be at your sibling's wedding, because that is not the kind of thing you have to assume, it's just a fact of the universe. Like gravity or Tuesday following Monday. The engagement was in February. The wedding was planned for October. By May, I still hadn't heard anything about bridesmaid dresses or save the dates. I mentioned it to my mom casually, just checking in. She went quiet for a moment and said she was sure they were still figuring things out. She knew. I understand that now. She knew and she said nothing. In July, my brother texted me. Abby said she'd prefer to keep it small on her side. I hope you understand. I sat with that text for a long time. I thought about what it meant. Abby had 4 bridesmaids. I later found this out from my cousin, who had seen the engagement photos Abby posted. 4 bridesmaids, a venue that held 200 people, a florist whose Instagram showed arrangements that cost more than my monthly car payment. Keep it small. I called my brother that night. He answered on the 3rd ring, and his voice had that quality it gets when he already knows a conversation is going to be uncomfortable. a little flat, a little rehearsed. I asked him to explain what the text meant. He said Abby wanted her side of the family to have the seats, that it was her day and she needed to feel comfortable, that he hoped I wouldn't make this into a thing. I asked him if he understood what I had been sending him every month for 5 years. He said he knew, and he appreciated it, and this was different. I asked him how it was different. He said, and I am not going to forget this as long as I live, he said. You're my sister. You'll always be my sister. But this is Abby's wedding too, and she doesn't feel close to you. I didn't say anything after that. I think I said okay. I think I said I had to go. I set the phone down on my kitchen counter, and I sat very still for a while, and then I opened my laptop and I logged into my bank. I looked at the automatic transfers, the $1,100 to my parents' shared account, the $700 to my brother's Venmo, set to repeat every first of the month. I looked at them for a long time, then I canceled them, not in a fit of rage, not dramatically. I clicked through the confirmation screens one at a time, and each one asked me, "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" And each time I clicked yes, I was sure. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. I did not tell anyone I'd canceled the payments. I just stopped. The transfers didn't go out on August 1st. I heard from my mom 4 days later. She called twice during my work hours, which she knew not to do, because I'd explained about the open plan office and how personal calls were noticeable. I let it go to voicemail. She called again that evening, and I picked up. She said the payment hadn't come through. She said she'd checked the account and it was empty. She said she didn't know what happened. Had something gone wrong with the bank? I told her nothing had gone wrong with the bank. There was a pause. She said, "Honey, we need that money. Your father's prescription. The utilities. We were counting on it." I said I knew they had been counting on it. Another pause. I said, "I found out in July that I am not invited to my brother's wedding." She didn't say anything right away. Then she said she knew it wasn't fair, but these things were complicated, and Abby had her reasons, and it didn't mean they loved me any less, and surely I wasn't going to punish them for a decision that wasn't theirs to make. I thought about 90,000. I thought about the crack in my windshield. I said, "I'm not punishing anyone, Mom, I'm just keeping my money." I kept my voice even. I didn't cry. I said goodnight, and I hung up. My dad called the next morning before I'd gotten out of bed. I watched his name light up my screen and I let it ring. He left a voicemail that was 7 minutes long. I know because the timestamp told me. I did not listen to it for 3 days. When I finally did, it started with disappointment and ended with something that was supposed to sound like understanding but wasn't. Somewhere in the middle, he said the phrase "after everything we've done for you," and I had to set my phone down and look at the ceiling for a while. After everything they'd done for me, I thought about what they had done for me. I thought about the fact that I had been working since I was 15. I thought about how I had paid for my own college with loans and a part-time job at a campus cafe. I thought about how my brother's name was on a lease I'd co-signed, how I'd paid the security deposit, how I'd bought the little girl her laptop without being asked, without being thanked, because it felt like the right thing to do. I wrote my dad back via text. I said, "I love you. I'm not sending money anymore. Please don't contact me at work." On a Wednesday morning in August, at 9:47, I got a call on my desk phone from a number I didn't recognize. The woman who answered was a friend of Abby's. I didn't know this immediately, I just knew it wasn't my family. She said she was calling on behalf of my family to let my manager know that I had a personal situation affecting my mental health, and that she was concerned about my ability to perform my job duties. I stared at my monitor while she talked. My coworker at the next desk glanced over. The woman on the phone said she wanted to make sure someone at my workplace knew so I could get the support I needed. I said very quietly, "I need you to stop speaking." I said, "I am going to document this call. Do not contact my employer again." I hung up. Then I walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and stood there with my back against the door for about 3 minutes. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from something colder. I had been quiet and I had been patient, and I had handed my family nearly $100,000, and they had sent someone to call my job. That was the moment something shifted. Not broke, shifted, like a bone that had been set wrong finally clicking into the right place. I went back to my desk. During my lunch break, I searched for employment attorneys in my city. I found one with good reviews who offered a free 15-minute consultation. I booked it for the following day. She was calm and methodical, and I liked her immediately. She explained that what had happened could potentially constitute workplace harassment and defamation, depending on what exactly was said to my employer and whether it caused professional harm. She told me to document everything: dates, times, what was said, any witnesses. She said a cease and desist letter could be drafted if I wanted to send a clear legal signal. I said I'd like that. The letter went out 2 weeks later, addressed to my brother and Abby, with my parents listed as additional parties. I didn't tell them it was coming. They found out when it arrived. My brother called 20 minutes after it must have landed. I watched his name on my screen, and I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring. He texted, "This is insane. We need to talk." I texted back, "Please direct any further contact through my attorney." I had never in my life felt so clear. My parents showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning 6 weeks before the wedding. I know they drove 2.5 hours because that's how far they lived. I was home. I could see them on my phone through the doorbell camera I'd installed. One of the first things I'd bought for myself in a long time. I watched my mom fix her hair, and my dad put his hands in his pockets and take them out again. I did not open the door. My mom knocked for a while. She said my name. She said they just wanted to talk. She said she was sorry, that she knew things had gone too far, that she loved me. I believed she loved me. That was never the question. I texted her, "I can see you on the camera. I'm not opening the door today. Please go home safe." She texted back a single word. Why? I thought about how to answer that. Then I didn't after. I just watched the camera until they got back in the car and drove away. The wedding happened on a Saturday in October. I know because my cousin mentioned it afterward, not unkindly, just noting it had happened. She said it was pretty. She didn't say much else. I spent that Saturday at a spa alone, something I had never done. I booked a 90-minute massage and a facial, and I sat in the warm pool afterward with a glass of water. And I listened to the quiet. No phone calls, no transfers, no calculations. Just the sound of water and the occasional soft voice from across the room. I thought about what I would do with the $1,800 a month that was no longer leaving my account. I had already made a list. The windshield first. Then a weekend trip to Savannah I'd seen a photo of once and saved in a folder on my phone called Someday. Then an appointment with a financial planner, because I was 31 and I had spent 6 years moving money away from myself, and it was time to move it back. I did not feel guilty sitting in that warm water. I want to be honest about that. I thought I would. I had expected guilt to show up like a familiar house guest, settling in with its coat still on, staying longer than welcome. It didn't come. What came instead was something quieter, a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in a long time. The recognition that I had given and given and given, and somewhere in all that giving, I had forgotten to check whether the door went both ways. It didn't. I'm not the kind of person who ends a story by telling you what to do. I think people figure things out on their own timeline, and sometimes they need to lose a lot before the picture comes clear. I lost 6 years of savings and weekends and vacations I didn't take. I lost the image of a family that would show up for me the way I showed up for them. But I got something back. I got my first Saturday off in as long as I could remember. I got the feeling of warm water and no notifications. I got the slow, strange, slightly terrifying experience of spending money on myself without apologizing for it. I fixed the windshield the following Monday. I drove to work under a clear view of the sky, and I thought, this is what it feels like when things are exactly as they should be. I kept driving.